Remember when Christmas dinner meant more than just a beef Wellington and mashed potatoes? The 1970s holiday table was a culinary adventure that today's generation can barely comprehend. These groovy holiday gatherings from the golden age of American suburbia served up some of the most ambitious, over-the-top, and surprisingly sophisticated Christmas foods in culinary history. Let's dig into 25 Christmas foods from the 1970s that defined an entire generation's holiday memories and shaped the way Gen X celebrates to this day. Roast turkey. The centerpiece of every holiday table from the 1950s to 1970s wasn't just any turkey. It was a golden brown bird that required military-level precision timing during the golden age of American entertaining. Housewives across America woke up at dawn on Christmas morning, wrestling 20-pound frozen turkeys into avocado green ovens while wearing their best holiday aprons. This wasn't the pre-brined, oven-ready birds we see today. Preparing Christmas foods in the 1970s meant thawing that turkey for 3 days in the garage, then stuffing the cavity with homemade bread cubes mixed with celery, onions, and enough sage to fill the house with that unmistakable holiday aroma that defined the era. The bird got basted every 30 minutes with butter and pan drippings, creating that crispy mahogany skin that crackled when you carved into it. Dad would carve at the table using an electric knife, the ultimate kitchen gadget from the 1970s, while everyone watched ceremoniously. This Christmas classic wasn't just dinner. It was theater, tradition, and the edible proof that Mom could handle the golden age of entertaining without breaking a sweat. Beef Wellington. When your parents from the 1970s really wanted to impress the in-laws at Christmas dinner, they didn't serve pot roast. They attempted Beef Wellington, the Mount Everest of holiday foods in the 1970s. This was the culinary equivalent of social climbing in your own kitchen during the golden age of ambitious home cooking. The preparation started days before Christmas, with a thick beef tenderloin getting seared in a cast-iron skillet until crusty brown on all sides. Then came the duxelle, finely minced mushrooms cooked down with shallots and butter until they formed a paste that smelled like the forest floor. Pâté de foie gras got smeared over the cooled beef, followed by the mushroom mixture, before the whole thing got wrapped in delicate puff pastry that had been rolled thin as paper. Into the oven it went, emerging 40 minutes later as a golden, flaky masterpiece that defined sophisticated Christmas foods from the 1970s. When sliced, the beef appeared perfectly pink inside, surrounded by layers of pastry, pâté, and mushrooms. A cross-section that made Gen X dinner guests gasp with admiration. Glazed ham. While turkey dominated Christmas Day throughout the 1950s to 1970s, the glazed ham ruled the holiday party circuit every December during this golden age of American cuisine. This wasn't some deli-sliced lunch meat. We're talking about a bone-in, spiral-cut ham studded with whole cloves and shellacked with a glaze so shiny you could check your reflection in it. The preparation ritual for this classic 1970s holiday food started with scoring the fat in a diamond pattern, then pressing a whole clove into each intersection point, creating a geometric masterpiece that looked like edible art from the era. The glaze was where housewives from the 1970s got creative. Brown sugar mixed with pineapple juice, honey combined with Dijon mustard, or the classic Coca-Cola reduction that caramelized into a sticky, sweet crust. As it baked, the ham released a sweet, savory aroma that mixed with clove spice, announcing to every neighbor within 3 houses that something special was happening. Served cold on Christmas morning with scrambled eggs, or hot at evening buffets, this ham represented the abundance that defined holiday foods in the 1970s and kept Gen X families fed well into January. Ambrosia salad. No holiday spread from the 1970s was complete without a bowl of ambrosia salad, sitting pretty on the buffet table, looking like an edible cloud from the golden age of gelatin-based cuisine. This wasn't salad in any modern sense. It was pure holiday decadence disguised as a side dish that baby boomers and Gen X kids grew up devouring. The base started with canned mandarin oranges and pineapple chunks, drained and patted dry with paper towels. Then came the mini marshmallows, shredded coconut, and maraschino cherries, the kind so red they stained your fingers and defined Christmas foods from the 1970s. Everything got folded into Cool Whip or sour cream, sometimes both, creating a fluffy, sweet mixture that grandmothers throughout the 1950s to 1970s swore was light, despite being pure sugar and cream. Some families added chopped pecans for crunch. Others threw in banana slices. The name comes from ancient mythology. Ambrosia was the food of the gods, and housewives during the golden age of American entertaining treated it with similar reverence. Kids fought over the marshmallows, adults pretended it counted as fruit intake, and this holiday classic from the 1970s always disappeared first from the table. Crown Roast of Pork Nothing said, "Fancy Christmas dinner in the 1970s. Quite like a crown roast of pork, sitting majestically on the holiday table during the golden age of show-stopping centerpieces." This wasn't ordinary pork. It was 2 racks of pork loin tied together in a circle, ribs pointing upward like a monarch's crown, representing the pinnacle of holiday foods from the 1970s. Your butcher from the era had to special order it weeks in advance, French the bones until they gleamed white, and tie the roast with kitchen twine to hold its regal shape. The cavity in the center got filled with bread stuffing mixed with apples, onions, and sage, soaking up all those pork drippings as it cooked. Each exposed rib bone got crowned with a paper frill, little white chef's hats that made the roast look like it belonged in a fancy restaurant from the golden age rather than your suburban dining room. The roast required precise timing and constant basting to keep the meat tender while achieving that golden brown crust that defined Christmas foods through the 1950s to 1970s. When Dad carved it tableside, each guest received a perfectly portioned chop with stuffing, making everyone feel like royalty during this Gen X era of elaborate holiday entertaining. Shrimp cocktail. Before every fancy Christmas dinner from the 1970s, there sat the shrimp cocktail. That elegant appetizer that separated regular holiday gatherings from sophisticated affairs during the golden age of entertaining. Large Gulf shrimp got boiled in water, seasoned with Old Bay, lemon slices, and bay leaves until they turned that perfect coral pink that defined holiday foods in the 1970s. Once chilled, they hung dramatically over the rim of fancy glass goblets, tails curled just so, surrounding a center pool of cocktail sauce. That sauce wasn't store-bought during this era. Housewives from the 1970s mixed ketchup with fresh horseradish that cleared your sinuses, a squeeze of lemon juice, and a dash of Worcestershire sauce that gave it depth. The shrimp had to be deveined perfectly, leaving no black line to offend guests at these golden age gatherings. Serving shrimp cocktail meant you'd made it socially, showing neighbors and relatives that your Christmas foods from the 1970s included expensive seafood flown in from the Gulf Coast. Gen X kids watched adults delicately dip each shrimp, trying to look sophisticated while fighting the horseradish burn. Cheese balls. Every holiday party from the 1950s to 1970s featured at least one cheese ball sitting on the credenza, rolled in crushed pecans or dried parsley, representing the golden age of make-ahead appetizers. This wasn't fancy artisanal cheese. It was cream cheese mixed with sharp cheddar, both at room temperature and whipped together until fluffy. Worcestershire sauce, garlic powder, and a hint of onion powder gave it that tangy bite that defined Christmas foods in the 1970s. Some housewives added crumbled blue cheese for sophistication. Others mixed in dried beef for a pink speckled interior that looked festive. The mixture got shaped into a perfect sphere, using your hands because food processors weren't yet standard in Gen X kitchens, then rolled in whatever coating showed your personality during this era. Pecans meant Southern elegance, parsley showed health consciousness, and crushed potato chips proved you were fun and practical. The cheese ball sat there all evening, surrounded by Ritz crackers arranged in a perfect circle, slowly getting demolished by guests who couldn't stop spreading it. This holiday classic from the 1970s could be made 3 days ahead, wrapped in plastic wrap, and pulled out when company arrived. Cranberry Jell-O salad. The crown jewel of holiday foods from the 1970s was the cranberry Jell-O salad, wobbling magnificently in its molded form on the Christmas table during the golden age of gelatin cuisine. This wasn't just Jell-O. It was an engineering marvel that housewives throughout the 1950s to 1970s perfected through trial and error. Cherry or cranberry Jell-O got dissolved in boiling water, then mixed with whole cranberry sauce straight from the can, creating that deep red color that screamed Christmas. Mini marshmallows, crushed pineapple, and chopped walnuts got suspended in the mixture as it started to set, creating layers of texture that defined this era's holiday foods. Some Gen X mothers added cream cheese for white marbled swirls. Others folded in Cool Whip for a lighter texture. The mixture got poured into elaborate copper molds shaped like wreaths, stars, or bundt cakes, then refrigerated overnight until firm. The unmolding process was pure anxiety, running warm water over the outside of the mold, saying a prayer, then inverting it onto a lettuce-lined plate. When it released with a satisfying slurp, revealing every detail of the mold's pattern, you knew your Christmas dinner from the 1970s would be perfect. Cheese fondue. Nothing captured the spirit of holiday entertaining in the 1970s, quite like gathering around a bubbling fondue pot during the golden age of interactive dining. This Swiss-inspired tradition became the ultimate Christmas party food from the 1970s, turning dinner into an experience that Gen X kids found magical. The preparation started with rubbing the inside of the fondue pot with a cut garlic clove, leaving behind just enough flavor to perfume everything. Swiss Gruyere and Emmental cheeses got shredded, never pre-shredded because it contained anti-caking agents that ruined the texture, and tossed with cornstarch to help create that smooth, velvety consistency. White wine heated in the pot, then the cheese went in gradually, stirred in figure-8 patterns until it melted into a golden, glossy pool that defined sophisticated holiday foods from the 1950s to 1970s. A splash of kirsch, added at the end, gave it that authentic Alpine flavor. Cubed French bread, blanched vegetables, and apple slices surrounded the pot, each guest armed with a long fondue fork for spearing and dipping. The fondue pot sat in the center of the table on its stand, heated by a small flame underneath, keeping everything molten throughout the evening during these golden age gatherings. Pigs in a blanket. Every Christmas party from the 1970s featured a platter of pigs in a blanket fresh from the oven, representing the golden age of kid-friendly holiday foods that adults secretly devoured too. This wasn't gourmet cuisine. It was pure, unpretentious party food that Gen X kids begged their mothers to make for every holiday gathering throughout the 1950s to 1970s. Small cocktail wieners or cut-up hot dogs got wrapped in triangles of refrigerated crescent roll dough, the kind that came in those cardboard tubes you whacked against the counter edge. Each little bundle got placed seam-side down on a baking sheet, sometimes brushed with butter, and baked until the dough turned golden brown and flaky. They emerged hot and puffy, the wiener inside having released its juices into the pastry, creating pockets of savory flavor that defined Christmas foods in the 1970s. Smart hostesses made double batches because these disappeared within minutes at holiday parties during this golden age. Served with yellow mustard or fancy Dijon for dipping, pigs in a blanket represented democratic eating. Fancy enough for company, simple enough that kids could help make them, perfectly capturing the spirit of holiday foods from the 1970s. Spinach dip in bread bowl. The spinach dip served in a hollowed-out bread bowl became the centerpiece of every holiday appetizer, spread from the 1970s, defining the golden age of impressive yet easy party foods. This creation from the era combined frozen chopped spinach, thawed and squeezed dry in a kitchen towel until your hands turned green, with sour cream, mayonnaise, and a packet of Knorr vegetable soup mix that contained all the seasoning you needed. Water chestnuts added that unexpected crunch that made guests from the 1950s to 1970s ask, "What's that texture?" while diced scallions provided color and a sharp bite. The mixture sat in the refrigerator overnight, letting flavors meld into that perfect balance that defined Christmas foods in the 1970s. The presentation was pure Golden Age theater. A large round sourdough loaf got its top cut off and insides pulled out, creating an edible serving bowl that Gen X party guests found revolutionary. The spinach dip filled the bread bowl, while the torn bread pieces surrounded it for dipping. As the evening progressed, guests would tear pieces directly from the bowl itself, eventually eating the container along with the contents, leaving nothing but crumbs by midnight during these holiday gatherings from the 1970s. Green bean casserole. No Christmas dinner from the 1970s was complete without green bean casserole, that humble side dish that became an icon of holiday foods during the golden age of cream of something cooking. This wasn't fresh green beans from the garden. It was canned green beans, drained and poured straight into a casserole dish, embracing the convenience that defined the era from the 1950s to 1970s. A can of Campbell's cream of mushroom soup got mixed with milk until smooth, then poured over those beans, coating every piece in that thick, savory sauce that Gen X kids either loved or hated with no middle ground. Soy sauce added umami depth, black pepper provided bite, and some housewives from the 1970s threw in sliced water chestnuts for texture. The whole thing baked until bubbling, then got crowned with French's fried onions. Those crispy, golden rings that became synonymous with Christmas foods in the 1970s, before going back in the oven until those onions turned deeper brown. The casserole emerged hot and steaming, the onions crunchy against the creamy beans, representing everything practical about holiday cooking during the golden age of American cuisine. It could feed 15 people, cost less than $5, and nobody ever complained about having it on their plate at holiday gatherings from the 1970s. Deviled eggs. Every holiday buffet table from the 1950s to 1970s featured a platter of deviled eggs arranged in concentric circles, representing the golden age of make-ahead appetizers that Gen X grew up loving. Hard-boiling eggs perfectly was an art form during this era. Older eggs from the back of the refrigerator peeled easier than fresh ones, a trick housewives from the 1970s passed down through generations. Once boiled and cooled in ice water, the eggs got halved lengthwise, their yolks scooped into a bowl and mashed with mayonnaise, yellow mustard, and a splash of pickle juice that gave them tang. Some added a dash of Worcestershire sauce or hot sauce for complexity that defined sophisticated holiday foods in the 1970s. The yolk mixture got piped back into the white halves using a pastry bag, or a plastic baggie with the corner snipped off for practical housewives during the golden age, creating those perfect swirls that showed you cared about presentation. Paprika dusted over the top provided that essential pop of red color that made them look festive for Christmas foods from the 1970s. Fancier versions included crumbled bacon, minced chives, or a tiny shrimp perched on top, elevating them to company-worthy status at holiday parties throughout this era. Prawn cocktail. While Americans called it shrimp cocktail, the British-influenced prawn cocktail became a sophisticated starter at Christmas dinners from the 1970s, during the golden age of international cuisine hitting suburban tables. Large prawns got poached gently in salted water with lemon until they turned that perfect pink that defined holiday foods from the era, then chilled until ice-cold and firm. The sauce was different from American cocktail sauce. This was Marie Rose sauce, a British creation that mixed mayonnaise with ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, lemon juice, and a hint of brandy that made Gen X dinner guests feel worldly. Shredded iceberg lettuce lined individual glass bowls or champagne coupes, those prawns arranged artfully on top, their tails hanging over the rim just so. The pink sauce got drizzled over everything, sometimes with a lemon wedge perched on the side for those who wanted extra acidity. A sprinkle of paprika and fresh parsley completed the presentation that defined elegant Christmas foods from the 1950s to 1970s. This appetizer showed you'd traveled, understood international cuisine, and weren't afraid to bring Golden Age British sophistication to your American holiday table during the 1970s. Cocktail meatballs, sweet and tangy cocktail meatballs became the ultimate crowd pleaser at every Christmas party from the 1970s, bubbling away in a slow cooker during the golden age of plug-in entertaining. These weren't Italian meatballs with marinara. These holiday foods from the 1970s used a sauce that shocked modern cooks with its simplicity. Frozen meatballs, the pre-made kind from the grocery store that saved Gen X housewives hours of work, got dumped straight into a crock-pot without thawing. The sauce was pure Golden Age ingenuity from the 1950s to 1970s. One jar of grape jelly mixed with one bottle of chili sauce, creating a sweet, spicy glaze that turned glossy and thick as it cooked. Some versions used cranberry sauce instead of jelly, making them extra festive for Christmas foods in the 1970s. The meatballs simmered for hours, absorbing that sauce until they were sticky and caramelized on the outside, tender inside. Toothpicks stuck in each one made them perfect finger food for holiday parties during this era. Guests always asked for the recipe, shocked when you revealed the two-ingredient sauce that defined the no-fuss sophistication of entertaining in the 1970s. The slow cooker kept them hot all evening, never drying out, making them the reliable party food that every Golden Age hostess could count on. Stuffed mushrooms. Stuffed mushrooms elevated any Christmas appetizer spread from the 1970s into something special during the golden age of showing off your cooking skills to Gen X neighbors. Large white button mushrooms, the only kind readily available during the era from the 1950s to 1970s, got their stems gently twisted out, creating little cups perfect for filling. Those stems didn't go to waste. Housewives from the 1970s chopped them finely and sautéed them with butter, garlic, and breadcrumbs until golden and fragrant. Cream cheese softened to room temperature got mixed in, along with grated Parmesan, creating a rich filling that defined upscale holiday foods in the 1970s. Some added crumbled sausage for heartiness. Others mixed in crab meat for elegance that showed they weren't afraid to splurge on Christmas foods from the Golden Age. The mushroom caps got brushed with melted butter, filled with the mixture, and arranged on baking sheets before going into a hot oven. They emerged 20 minutes later, with the filling puffed and golden, the mushrooms having released their juices to create little pools of savory liquid underneath. Served hot on a platter at holiday parties throughout the 1970s, these represented the perfect balance of elegant and achievable that defined the era's entertaining style for Gen X families. Oyster cheese log. The oyster cheese log was that controversial appetizer at Christmas parties from the 1970s that divided Gen X guests into camps during the golden age of adventurous entertaining. This wasn't for the faint of heart. It combined ingredients that modern palates might find challenging, but defined sophisticated holiday foods from the 1950s to 1970s. Cream cheese formed the base, softened and whipped until fluffy, then mixed with canned smoked oysters that had been drained and chopped into small pieces. The oysters gave everything a briny, smoky flavor that housewives from the 1970s considered the height of elegance for Christmas foods during this era. Worcestershire sauce, lemon juice, and garlic powder added complexity, while finely minced onion provided bite. The mixture got shaped into a log, rolled tightly in plastic wrap, and refrigerated overnight until firm. Before serving at Golden Age holiday gatherings, the log got rolled in chopped fresh parsley or crushed pecans, giving it that finished look that impressed guests at parties. Liver sausage pineapple. Nothing says 1970s Christmas party quite like a liver sausage pineapple sitting on your appetizer table during the golden age of creative food presentations. This wasn't actual fruit. It was an edible sculpture that defined the playful spirit of holiday foods from the 1950s to 1970s. Braunschweiger liver sausage got mixed with cream cheese and mayonnaise until spreadable, then shaped into an oval form resembling a pineapple. The exterior got completely covered with slivered almonds, pressed in at an angle to look like pineapple skin texture, showing the artistic ambition of Gen X housewives from the era. A real pineapple top, the leafy crown cut from a fresh pineapple, got stuck into the top, completing the illusion that made guests from the 1970s do a double take. The taste was rich, savory, and intensely liver-forward. Not for everyone, but beloved by those who grew up on these Christmas foods during the Golden Age. Surrounded by party rye bread or fancy crackers, this conversation-starting centerpiece of holiday gatherings from the 1970s proved that housewives during this era weren't afraid to have fun with their food. It represented the creative spirit, the willingness to try anything, and the absolute confidence that characterized entertaining in the 1970s before food became too serious. Baked Alaska. When 1970s, families really wanted to end Christmas dinner with a showstopper during the golden age of dessert theater. They served Baked Alaska, that impossible dessert that combined ice cream and fire. This wasn't a recipe for the faint of heart. It was the Everest of holiday foods from the 1950s to 1970s that separated confident cooks from the rest. The base started with a layer of pound cake or sponge cake, topped with a thick slab of ice cream, usually vanilla, strawberry, and chocolate layers, that had been softened just enough to shape. The whole thing went into the freezer to get rock hard while you prepared the meringue that defined this golden age dessert. Swiss meringue made from egg whites and sugar got beaten until it formed stiff, glossy peaks that could stand up to heat, then spread thickly over every inch of the ice cream and cake, sealing it completely. Into a blazing hot oven, it went for just 3 to 5 minutes, long enough for the meringue to brown and caramelize, but not long enough to melt the ice cream underneath. The magic trick that made Gen X dinner guests gasp at Christmas parties from the 1970s. Some housewives from the era added dramatics by dousing it with warm brandy and lighting it aflame tableside, the blue flames dancing across the browned meringue peaks, creating a finale worthy of holiday gatherings during this golden age. Mary's Christmas Tree. This architectural masterpiece walked straight off an old Hollywood movie set onto 1970s Christmas tables. Mary's Christmas tree wasn't just food. It was engineering, artistry, and holiday spirit molded into one impressive cream cheese centerpiece. Grandma softened blocks of cream cheese days before her vintage Christmas party, mixing in fresh dill, parsley, dried chives, Worcestershire sauce, and garlic powder. She sculpted the mixture into a cone shape on her best serving platter. Then, the magic happened. Green bell pepper pieces became garland, cherry tomato halves turned into ornaments, and a yellow pepper star crowned the top. Pimento strips wrapped around like tinsel. The cream cheese stayed firm enough to hold its shape, but soft enough to spread on crackers. This retro appetizer represented everything baby boomer food culture celebrated. Abundant, beautiful, and completely over the top for holiday buffets. Bacon-wrapped smokies. Nothing says Gen X memories like the smell of bacon-wrapped cocktail sausages caramelizing in the oven during holiday entertaining. These 3-ingredient wonders became the most reliable Christmas appetizers from the 1970s, because even kitchen-averse hosts couldn't mess them up. Grandma cut bacon strips into thirds, wrapped each piece around a little smoky sausage, and secured everything with toothpicks. She arranged them in a baking dish. Then, the secret ingredient, brown sugar, got sprinkled generously over the top. As they baked at 350 degrees, the sugar melted into the bacon fat, creating a sticky, sweet glaze that turned each bite into salty, sweet perfection. The bacon crisped up while the smokies stayed juicy. That aroma of caramelizing sugar and rendering pork fat announced to arriving guests that this was a real party. These retro appetizers disappeared faster than anything else on vintage Christmas parties' buffet tables. Nutty Puppy Chow. Before it became a mall food court staple, Puppy Chow was a Christmas in the 1970s secret weapon that kept kids and adults happy at vintage Christmas parties. Grandma melted chocolate chips with peanut butter and butter in a saucepan, stirring until glossy and smooth. She poured this mixture over Chex cereal in her largest bowl, tossing gently to coat every square. Then came the magic. She dumped everything into a paper grocery bag with powdered sugar, folded the top, and shook vigorously. Kids fought over who got to shake the bag. When the cereal emerged, each piece was completely coated in sweet white powder, with chocolate peanut butter flavor hidden underneath. The texture combination was perfect. Crunchy cereal, smooth chocolate coating, powdery sugar finish. This baby boomer food classic wasn't fancy, but it disappeared faster than appetizers that took hours to make. Pure American nostalgia in every handful. Egg rolls. When egg rolls appeared on the 1970s Christmas buffets, they announced that this hostess was adventurous, embracing Chinese-American cuisine during its surge in popularity. Grandma bought wonton wrappers from the Asian grocery store, an exotic expedition in itself. She stir-fried shredded cabbage, carrots, and celery with ground pork, seasoned with soy sauce, ginger, and garlic. Bean sprouts and water chestnuts added crunch. After cooling the filling, she placed spoonfuls on each wrapper, folded the sides in, and rolled them tight, sealing the edges with beaten egg. Deep frying happened in her electric skillet, filled with peanut oil heated to exactly 350 degrees. The wrappers bubbled and blistered, turning golden and crispy. She drained them on paper towels before arranging them on serving platters with small bowls of sweet and sour sauce and hot mustard. These Christmas appetizers from the 1970s represented American nostalgia for Chinese takeout, elevated to party food.